What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I've got a super quick little video for you guys about the scopes in Battlefield 2042 and just what they actually do. This isn't going to be the same as most of my other testing videos simply because they do exactly as I thought they did. However, I have had a few comments sort of talking about the fact that they think that they changed the recoil patterns and stuff like that, so I thought I'd make this video anyway, even though it's essentially going to seem pointless to any of you that know how the scopes work. But yeah, wanted to make it anyway as almost like a little Mythbusters video, as well as just being able to use it as a reference down the line. If I ever need to talk about what scopes do, then at least this video is on the channel. So without wasting any time, we're going to get stuck straight into it. I didn't initially plan on testing the scopes in this game, but like I said, I did have a few comments in both the comment section of my videos as well as on live streams, where a few of you guys were actually saying that the scopes in 2042 changed the recoil patterns of the weapons. Now in the background, I'm just going to show the actual test. I'm not going to bother going through and explaining what I'm testing because I'll just show you the results at the end. But while you guys are watching that, I wanted to explain how most of the attachments in 2042 and essentially any game that exists, how they generally work. So obviously when it comes to, say, the shortened barrel in this game, obviously that increases your rate of fire and it actually reduces your bullet velocity, so that is changing the stats of your weapon. When you equip that on your weapon, it will obviously change the actual stats of the gun, and same goes for like different ammo types. Like close combat bullets will actually fire faster than the regular ammunition, and then with stuff like grips and stuff like that, it will obviously just affect your recoil patterns. So pretty much any other attachment type will affect the actual stats of your weapon. However, when it comes to scopes, they essentially change absolutely nothing other than what it looks like when you're firing, essentially. Now, there is one single stat that they change, and that is your ADS speed. So obviously, if you're using the iron sights, you will aim down sights faster than if you're using, say, a 6x scope. So technically, that is a stat that they change, but outside of that, when it comes to actually shooting your weapon, they don't change a single stat in the game. However, like I said, I had heard a few rumors that they actually were, and to be completely honest with how inconsistent some of the other attachments in the game are, I actually did just want to test this out because it would not surprise me if they did actually change your recoil stats and stuff like that. But what I can safely say, at least from the weapons that I tested and the scopes that I tested, is that the scopes in Battlefield 2042 do not change your recoil pattern at all. Visually, they will change your recoil. There is a difference between visual recoil and the actual recoil pattern of the weapon, and I will explain that in just a second. But yeah, in terms of the actual like physical stats of your weapon, they do not change your recoil pattern at all. As you guys can see from some of these results, all of these recoil patterns, albeit with a slight little change in every single one, they are all essentially the exact same. I tested the same weapon with a bunch of different scopes. I didn't test every single scope, to be fair, on this weapon, but I essentially tested some of the the bigger jumps from, say, like the 6x scope to the fusion hollow sight and stuff like that. And I think I ended up testing about 7 or 8 scopes in this video. So as you can see, they all look essentially identical. There are some very small changes there, but that is essentially just to do with the randomness of the recoil. No recoil pattern is ever the exact same, simply because otherwise the best players in the game would be able to turn their weapon into an absolute laser beam. So there's always some level of like randomness to it. But yeah, I'm sure you guys would agree that all of these recoil patterns you're seeing, they all look essentially the exact same, yet every one of these was actually with a different sight. So I can safely say that the scopes in Battlefield 2042 do not change the recoil pattern. What I will say is that there may be some outliers out there with like some bugged attachments or even just certain weapons where it affects the actual recoil pattern. So if there are any that you guys know of that are actually changing the patterns of your weapons, then definitely leave a comment down below because I can actually pass that on to the dev team. That would no doubt be a bug if that is the case. They're not intended to work that way, but yeah, at least for the ones that are working as intended, they do not change the recoil at all. Now lastly, to just quickly sort of explain the visual recoil versus the actual recoil pattern of the weapon, what I'm talking about is that essentially the more zoomed out that you are, the less visual recoil there'll be, so essentially the less your screen will jump around, whereas obviously if you use an SMG with a 12x scope, that is going to jump around like crazy. Technically speaking, your bullets will go in essentially the exact same place, but on your screen it will essentially just look like it's got more recoil, simply because being so zoomed in will actually make it more of a drastic movement, if that makes sense. An easy way to think of it is, imagine you have a pair of binoculars and you're looking at 10 times the size of what your regular eyes see. If you turn 1 degree to the left, that's obviously going to move quite a bit in your actual vision, like what you can see will change quite a bit. Whereas if you then just put the binoculars down and you just turn your head another 1 degree, it's barely going to look like you've moved at all. So when it comes to the visual recoil, the more zoomed in your scope is, if you're using a 6x scope on an AR, Art, for example, that is going to kick like absolute hell compared to, say, a Fusion Holo, where it's just a nice clear sight with, I think, 1.25 times zoom. Where your bullets go is exactly the same, doesn't matter what scope you're using, the bullets will go in essentially the exact same spot, outside of obviously just that slight randomness. But yeah, obviously the more zoomed in you are, the more it's going to look like it's recoiling. So I know to a lot of you that's super simple stuff. That's how scopes work in essentially any game, and to be honest, that's exactly how scopes work in real life too. Obviously, if you put a scope on your weapon, it's not going to change the recoil. To a certain extent it would, because if you have a super heavy scope, for example, that may change the recoil in a real weapon, but you know what I mean. In essentially any game, scopes aren't meant to change the actual accuracy of the weapon. So like I said, this may be super obvious to a lot of you guys, but I wanted to put this video out there to just kind of prove that to you guys, because I know that there were a few people saying that they did actually change the stats, as well as obviously, like I said, just being able to use this as a reference down the line. If anyone sort of comes into a live stream and says, hey, this scope's better than that scope, I can just show them this video and show that it is essentially just down to personal preference. So bit of a random video today, and it is a lot shorter than most of my testing videos, but thought it was still worth covering. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.